Okay, welcome to class number 77 of Faith and Calm. All of you out there in video land, we're going to be watching this on delayed. Just remember, did you get the jokes when you come at the beginning. So that's the onus of coming at the beginning. So today's class is entitled Dealing with Irritating People. And it's going to be based on the Parsha, based on a lecture from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. As I said, how to deal with irritating people. Molly is here, good. Welcome to class 77. So the joke goes as follows, the story. So there were these two snakes, and they were sitting and they were talking to each other. And one snake says to the other, he says, I have a question for you. And the second snake says, you and your stupid questions. What is it this time? He says, no, this is an important question. He says, yeah, let me see. So he says, this first snake says, listen, are we venomous or not? So the second snake says, I told you, stop with your stupid questions. And the first snake says, no, it's an important question to me. He says, why? He says, because I just bit my lip. Okay, but it relates to this week's parsha and this week's topic, which is how to deal with irritating people. How do we deal with irritating people, including ourselves? Sometimes we irritate ourselves. I'm sorry, I'm ad-libbing Miriam Adahan's book, How to Deal with Difficult People, Including Yourself. So it's a very interesting book. Oh my, okay, it just centered me. The reason why this is important is because there's a story in the Parsha that we just read, Parsha's Noah. After Noah comes off of the ark, the first thing he does is he plants a vineyard. And he makes out of the vineyard. What do you do with vineyards? You make wine. So he made some wine, and he got drunk. He got drunk, and he was laying uncovered in his tent. And one of his sons, Ham, the oldest son, I think, the oldest son sees him and finds it really funny, and decides to gossip and tell everybody in the entire world what he just saw. It wasn't too hard to tell everybody in the whole world. There were only 3 other people. there was Ham, there was Shem and Yafes, But there was, the nature of gossip. He told everybody. He told everybody in the entire world what he saw. Shem and Yafes' response was different. And the Torah records this, and it finds this an important story. They say what happened was that Shem and Yafet took a cloak. They walked backwards, and they, with their heads turned away from their father, and they covered him, and they did not see his nakedness. The commentators say, I think I don't understand why it's telling us all these details. I mean, for example, why is it saying that they didn't see their father's nakedness? If they're walking backwards and their heads are turned away, it's sort of obvious that they're not going to see anything. Why you have to, what are you trying to teach us there? So Rashi explains it simply, which is his approach. He only wants to teach you the simple thing. He says, well, yes, they were walking backwards, but it's very hard to cover somebody when your body is faced the wrong direction. So they had to, when they finally got close to Noah, they had to turn and face him. But then they still turned their heads away, so they didn't see him. But the Rebbe brings up the question, and he says, that still doesn't answer everything. I mean, because when your head is turned away, then obviously you don't see him. You don't have eyes in the back of your head. So why does it have to say he didn't see something? This is the Torah's way to teach us an important psychological tool and trick and advice. When you see something disgusting, when you see something that is upsetting to you, when somebody does something upsetting to you, we're actually supposed to learn a lesson from this. That's why the Torah is teaching us this lesson. And many of the stories in the Chumash Bereshis, as I said, are all about teaching us about, basic ideas and menschlichkeit and how to be a human being. So to begin the story, to begin the answer, well, it won't be the whole answer. This is actually sort of getting to a basic concept that the Baal Shem Tov taught, which is that everything we see is there for a purpose. So if you see something that's not, you don't like, there's something disturbing, something that's not, it's there for a purpose. It's not just there for you to get upset. It's there also for you to learn something from. What are you supposed to learn? You're supposed to learn that everything you see is actually a mirror for yourself. And that if you're disturbed by it, it's really trying to also teach you, because you may not be able to do anything about that other person. You're supposed to learn a lesson yourself, that you're supposed to fix something yourself. For example, as the story goes, these two guys both went down a chimney. I guess they were thieves, you know, they were trying to break into a house. When they got down into the bottom of the chimney, one's face was all black and the other's face was not black. So the question is, this is the quiz. The quiz is, who washes his face? Anybody want to answer the question? Well, the usual answer is the guy with the clean face washes his face. Why? Because he sees the other guy's face is dirty. He assumes that it's him, and therefore he washes his face. While the guy who's dirty looks at the other guy's face, and since it's clean, he assumes his face is clean, so he never washes his face. That's the usual answer. The Gemara answer. See, we overthink things, and so it says, no, they both wash their faces. Because when the guy with the dirty face sees the guy clean face washing his face, he says, why is he washing his face? He must be looking at me and think that my face is dirty. So therefore, I should wash my face too. Okay. But anyway, the Baal Shem Tov is saying that if you see something negative in another person, it's a lesson for you. The reason why it's driving you crazy is because, not because that you're supposed to do something with the other person. It's a lesson. There's a reason it happened to you. The Rebbe looks at this and he says this lesson is being understood too simply, and that we're not really learning something positive from it. And there's a whole bunch of questions that you should ask when you hear such a teaching like this, because is it really true? Is it 100% true that when I see something who does something bad, somebody treats me badly, I should really just internalize it and think there's something wrong about myself? For example, I mean, if you give somebody, in a business deal, $100, and he wastes it, and he loses your money, is that a message for you that you're a person who's negligent and loses money? No, not necessarily. He did the problem. So there's something wrong there. It's not all about me. It's about, sometimes people do some things and they're at fault. And in fact, Torah even tells you many times that when you see people doing things bad, you're supposed to rebuke them. You don't have to necessarily scream and yell at them, but it's not right. Judaism is not this lovey-dovey, ultra liberal thing that says, you never judge anybody else. And therefore, everybody is fine if they're murdering or killing or doing some other awful, evil thing. It is a Jewish thing to protest and to say something about it if it's going to help. So it seems like, the Baal Shem Tov is teaching that you're supposed to just internalize it and think about yourself whenever you see something bad. Doesn't sound right. So the answer is we're not understanding the Baal Shem Tov properly. But here is where we actually do learn how to do what the story is. And the brief answer to the question is that there actually is two parts to everything. There's the practical action that I have to take when I see something negative. And then there's sometimes my emotional response to the action. What do I mean by that? So let's take an example again. The example is, there's a Jewish guy. He has a big business factory. And he has a couple workers for him. We'll give them names. We'll say that one guy is the bookkeeper. His name is Ruvain. And then there's two other employees named Shimon and Levi. Everybody assumes everything is going fine, but one day Shimon sees that Ruvain is actually stealing money. The bookkeeper is not being honest. And he's shocked. How could this guy do it? How can he be doing it? And he pretends to be religious and he's stealing from our boss. I am so shocked. I'm so upset. I'm furious at this guy. It's a Chilul Hashem. It's a desecration of God's name. And therefore, he goes around and he starts telling everybody, how bad this guy is, and and telling all about him, because he's really bad, and he pretends to be good, and I'm just all upset about him and what he's doing. So that's Shimon's response. Levi's response is, he goes to one of his friends, his advisors, and he says, I just saw something, and it bothers me a lot. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know. Should I expose him? Should I publicize this? Should I go to the boss quietly and tell the boss what's happening? Should I tell Ruvain? Maybe Ruvain will change his ways, and then nobody else will know about it. Ruvain will fix it, and improve himself. Maybe I should go to the police. What should I do? What is my action supposed to do? So Ruvain thinks about the action, and Levi thinks about the action, and Shimon thinks is running around telling stories. A second story will also help to explain this. There's two guys. Let's call them Dan and Naphtali. Two men, and they're both married to a woman, to a wives. But we're going to give them the same name, both of them Sarah, just to make the story a little easier to explain. And both these guys love to have guests for Shabbos, likes to have a lot of people coming, likes to have, a lot of people at this table and is over and stuff like that. And, likes to do that. Sarah doesn't mind that either, but Sarah is oftentimes overwhelmed and stressed and says, I can't do it to guests this week because the house isn't clean, because everything isn't in order, that I don't have the food, I don't have enough menus, I don't have anything interesting to serve, this and so forth. And so many times she backs out of the situation. Dan's response is, what is wrong with this lady? Everybody else has guests over. Why is she so fanatic about, about how everything having to be perfect and clean and organized and so forth? What is her issue? And he gets all cooked up about it. Well, as Naphtali says, that's my wife, and having guests is difficult. I understand. Maybe I should talk with her. Maybe we can do it every other week. Maybe I should get her some help. Maybe I should, I should pitch in a little bit more in making it. So Naphtali's response is very different than Dan's response. So now let's look at these cases, and then we're going to understand something. In the case of Dan and Naphtali, they were different in the following. Naphtali's focus was always on, what am I supposed to do about this? I saw something I don't like. Somebody irritated me, something bothering me. Somebody got me spinning and so forth. Am I supposed to get all emotional about it? Or am I really practically oriented about what has to happen and what I'm going to do about it? That's Naphtali's approach. Dan's approach is, he lets his emotions drive him, and he's cooking on this day and night and all emotional about it, and he's making negative statements about his wife and everything else. His response is very different. He's not thinking about how to solve it, and the reason is what the Baal Shem Tov says, probably because he also has an issue with guests. He wants to show off how much he has guests. They also make him uncomfortable, and therefore his wife's response triggers in him a mirror looking at himself, and he sees, like that guy with the black face, he sees the guy with the black face and sees himself as being black. He feels bad about himself, and that's why he's being so upset. So when we see something happening, like the case of the two business people, the action was, one of them took an action to say, what am I supposed to do about this? And the others one took an action and said, basically, I'm going to go gossip about it and talk about it and get all upset about it emotionally and spend a lot of time on it, but not necessarily taking, just thinking about it coolly and calmly and thinking what the action is. And that is also the story with the sons of Noah. You see, Ham had a problem. Ham had a problem is, what? You were not supposed to, you're not supposed to have relations when they were in the ark with your wife, and he did. He violated. He was the only one who violated it. So when he saw his father naked, and there he had issues with himself. He thought about himself and he thought about his own issues, and therefore he actually he had his own issues, and that's why he was running around telling everybody about it. While Lishem and Yafet, the first thing they did is, what am I supposed to do? I don't see anything naked in my father. I really don't see the negativity. I see something I need to take care of. I need to put a cloak on my father. And that's what they did. They put a cloak and they covered him over, because their focus was on just getting the thing, solving the problem. And that really is the clue the Torah is teaching us, the psychological tool that's teaching us, is whenever you see something and you see some people are trying to pull you and trying to get you all wound up about whatever kinds of stuff, whether it's the vaxxers or the anti-vaxxers, the pro-Trump, the not Trump, whatever it is, you should blame the newspapers and the magazines and the news, because they're just trying to pull your emotions. And they're trying to get you all worked up about something that you really can't have any effect more than about whether Robert E. Lee actually did the right thing when he attacked Gettysburg or not. I mean, it's not your business. You can't do anything about it. It's done. Maybe he killed a lot of people because he was stupid. Okay, fine. He wasn't a good general. Yeah, but I can't do anything about that. So what can you do about things? Are your focus is your focus on what you're supposed to do? If your focus, when you see something and you're bothered by it and it's negative, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have that feeling. There's something terrible happening in the world. But the question is, practically, what are we supposed to do? If my focus is that, where's my focus about, getting in all the blogs and spending a lot of time writing comments and stuff like that? It's not helping. It's not doing anything. So what's the point about that, and so forth? So this is the lesson from Parshas Noah about dealing with irritating people, hearing about irritating events, hearing about very serious events sometimes. And the answer is, it's not so simple. I didn't say this is easy, because sometimes we spend the whole night just tossing and turning and thinking about what this person did at work or whatever about that, and how they disrespected me, they've invalidated me, whatever it is, and so forth. But the answer is you have to think about what is, a healthy person really doesn't let his ego get involved. He says, what am I supposed to do about it? If there's something I can do about it, let me take those actions to do about it. That is the lesson for tonight's class. And I'll turn the camera over to my wife. I hope that was simple and clear. I'm trying to get more simple and clear these days.
It was, and I never heard that explanation for it. That's interesting, because I thought that it would have been just that they were protecting their father's dignity, and that by describing how they walked to him, that was showing how the trouble the pains that they took to protect his dignity, because he was their parent.
And you're right. That's what they say. 70 faces the Torah, or maybe he said the Arizal said 600,000 interpretations. And there's nothing wrong with your interpretation. I just wanted to bring out what the Lubavitcher Rebbe thought. He says there's more to the story than you thought.
And well, I agree with you, and I was happy to hear that, because I didn't know about that. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. Okay. Excellent teaching. Thank you. Hi, Shalamis.
Hi, hello to everybody. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. And before we begin, does anybody have something that they'd like to say? Mine is very short, I have to say. My session tonight, it's very short, but I think there's something in it that's very helpful. So I guess nobody's going to say anything. So
just hi. How are you?
Good. Baruch Hashem. Thank God. Thank God. So I wanted to say that I'll begin the way we always begin, which is that the first thing that I like to say is that we're in an extraordinary time. What is extraordinary about it? We are in the time of the unveiling of the redemption of the Jewish people and the world. And so many sources say that it's not going to look like what it is. That the voice of Sheker, which means lies, will be everywhere. That the world is going to look like it's falling apart. And but nevertheless, if we have to cling to what our sages said, and we have to cling to what the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, that this is the time that it actually began. He said in 1992 that the time has actually begun. It's starting to unfold, and that some of the things that we see that are happening are actually the activities of Melech HaMashiach, King Mashiach, on the world. So, and the Rebbe also hinted broadly that he is Melech HaMashiach, he is the King Mashiach, and he also and he said that the grave will have no dominion over the leader of the generation, and you know these comments are wild comments, and coming from pretty much anybody else or from most people, you could discard such a thing. But coming from somebody with such a batting average as the Lubavitcher Rebbe saying extraordinary things that came true, it's something to take very seriously. So anyway, so we're in an extraordinary time. We have our souls are meant to be here. We're meant to play a critical role in this time. We've been in the world before. This is not our first incarnation. Pretty much nobody is here for the first time. Everybody who's here has been here before, but for Hashem's reasons, He wants us here at this particular juncture. And the third thing is that we have every tool that we need. We have Torah, which is our guidebook. We have mitzvahs, which are our power tools, and we have leaders like Lubavitcher Rebbe and like Moses in his time, and who is like Moses in his time. And fourth, that tonight we are actively helping the process of redemption by learning about it. We actively, the Rebbe says, it's the fastest way to speed up the process is to learn about it. So I want to say that one tool for faith and calm that I think that I don't think I've really spoken about a lot before, that I think is one of the most powerful tools in the world for faith and calm, is something that we could call it being your own best friend. And things happen to a person, things happen from the outside, and they're very, very stressful. They can be very, very, very stressful. However, if you're not being your own best friend, then everything in life is going to be 100 times worse, 1,000 times worse. So what do I mean by being your own best friend? I mean on a very, very, very basic level. I don't mean by buying yourself luxuries and running out and doing things that, I don't know, doing distracting things or whatever it is. I mean that in very, very simple ways. Are you giving yourself enough sleep? Are you giving yourself proper food? Are you giving yourself water? Those are the three biggest. Are you hydrating? Are you eating properly? And are you allowing yourself at least something like a decent night of sleep? And if a person does those things, they're much more able to tolerate whatever life dishes out to them. And it's true because it's true that your body will be in better shape, and therefore your mind will be in better shape because your mind is very dependent on your body. But it's also true that, this I've talked about before, that it's like there's a little person inside of us, inside of me, saying, is she going to take care of me today, or is she just going to dump me on the bottom of all the things that she has to do? And when we dump on ourselves, when we put ourselves last, when we don't take care of our basic needs, then we're terrified. The little kid inside of us is terrified. So, and if we put our foot down and say, no, I'm going to give myself some, guess what? Didn't eat. I'm going to eat. And you know what? I can't keep up this streak of late nights. I just can't do it. I have to have a normal, orderly life. And water, how many times do we check to see if we had enough water? Water is a huge thing. So that's what I would call the first rung of being your own friend. And the next rung would be, am I giving myself exercise, fresh air? Do I have a clean and orderly house? It's an amazing, my house right now, I just started working at school and I have a new job at school, and it's extremely demanding because it's demanding technologically, it's demanding in all these different ways. And I can tell you my little office doesn't look like it did right before I started school. And I'm working on the top rung: sleep, food, and water. Exercise, a clean, orderly house, and decent clothing are going to come next. And also, another thing that is extremely calming is being family to your family, and simply listening to them and being there for them, not being distracted when you're with them, even if it's, your relationship is on the phone, just being there for them and helping them feel that they actually rate. They are, you have a million things on your head, but they actually are first with you. And also another thing is not to preach to them, because it's really doesn't go over well with family whatsoever. And I have to point out that even if we have, Yaskol was talking about getting along with difficult people, I think that it's just normal in families that you're going to have some difficulties with some people. And if you think all the way back to this week's Parsha, Abraham didn't have such an easy time. Lot was his nephew, and not until today's Aliyah, but in maybe tomorrow's Aliyah, he has trouble with Lot. He has to split up with Lot. And Lot is his brother's son, and his brother is not alive anymore. And so he's taking care of him like his own son. And so it's not abnormal to have different things going on in your family, but to as much as possible to be family to your family. It's a calming thing, as much as they let you to do that. So anyway, I'm going to tell I'm going to tell one story, and it's a story about, it's a different kind of Rebbe miracle story. I've said different stories that I've experienced and different stories that people have experienced with blessings from the Rebbe, either personal blessings that they received from the Rebbe or blessings that came through writing to the Rebbe, and placing it in Igros Kodesh or other means of getting an answer. But today I'm going to talk about something that probably you've all heard of, but maybe you don't have a lot of experiences, and that's Rebbe dollars, So the first time I ever saw, was it the first time I ever saw the Rebbe? Yeah, the first time I ever saw the Rebbe, probably 1991, was when, and I've told the story, I'm not going to tell my story right now because I've told it before, but in 1991, a girlfriend of both mine and Suri's named Simachava said, Shlomis Yehudas, there's a rabbi in Brooklyn. He gives brachas to people to get married. She said, do you want to go? I said, sure. And we went. And my experience was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. It was very, very profound. But I'm not going to talk about it now. I'm going to talk about the concept of, when people got those dollars from the Rebbe, they helped them with, amazing, that people had got a lot of bracha from that. The Rebbe gave the dollar as like a tangible thing that carried blessing. And the person was supposed to give, if you got $1 from the Rebbe, you were supposed to give $1 or more to tzedakah, because it was the idea of passing on the blessing. So you could keep the dollar yourself, but to pass on that amount of money or much more. So this is a story we're going to discuss the difference between blessings and tefillah and this whole concept of the dollar. So first I'll tell a short story about it. In 2001, there was, it was the second Intifada, and Arab villages, they were bombing, shooting at nearby Israeli villages. And there was one Arab village called Beit Yala, and it was situated on a mountaintop. Right next to it was a mountaintop that had a Jewish village called Gilo. And so during the second Intifada, we could do this. They started shooting at Gilo, and the people in Gilo had to erect they had to erect barriers in front of like schools and in front of cement barriers in front of schools and in prominent areas because they were shooting right into the buildings, right into the heavily habitated, is that a word? Areas. So it got so bad that the Israelis had to send in a border patrol, and the border patrol did their best to protect the people in the community. And there was this one young guy, I don't know how young he was very young though. His name was Shimon Ohana, and Shimon Ohana served in this border patrol. And one afternoon at 2:00, they took a break. They took off their their bulletproof combat vests because they weren't going to be in any area where they could be shot at. And they just sat down to have like a snack, to have, and at that moment, a member of the Gilo community, a woman, started to cross the street or something like that, and all of a sudden the Arabs started shooting, open fire, and she dropped to the ground and she was scared as anything. And he wasn't wearing his vest, but he was so concerned about her, he wanted to protect her, that he ran out to her. And as he ran out to her, they saw, there was a gap, a tiny gap between each of the cement blocks, and they got him right between the two cement blocks, and he was shot through the heart. I don't know if it's 2 bullets or one. It went straight through his heart and out his body, and either another bullet or the same bullet also penetrated his stomach. He was totally, it was a total destruction, and he fell to the ground. And miraculously, there was a news photographer who was there, who came to cover the action. And he had just taken a course in first aid. He ran over to him, gave him first aid immediately. Wasn't breathing, no heartbeat, no nothing. And an ambulance, another example of divine providence, an ambulance was already on the way because somebody called an ambulance for the lady who fell down. So there was an ambulance there in seconds. And there was a doctor, not just medics. There was a doctor in the ambulance, and he happened to be a cardiologist. So this guy had everything working for him, but he had no heartbeat and he had no breathing. And the doctor tried to resuscitate him, no success at all. And he called the nearby hospital in Kerem, Hadassah. He called the trauma unit at Hadassah in Kerem, and he said, "What do I do? There's no heartbeat, there's no nothing, there's no reaction." And they said, "Doesn't matter, bring him anyway, bring him anyway." And so they thought, but there's nothing here. So they put him in a body bag, and they were going to take him to the hospital in a body bag. And then they noticed that the body bag was clinging to his mouth, meaning he was trying to breathe, he was trying to inhale. So they took him out of the body bag, and I guess they tried to resuscitate him. He got to the hospital, no pulse, no breathing. His heart had no blood for many, many minutes. And so they notified the family. The family ran over. He was the youngest of 6 kids. And they told them, just pray that he even, you have to pray for his life. He's dead. He's not alive. And they gave him 3 different surgeries over the course of the next 12 hours or so. And because he was an extremely young guy, and I guess they when you're very young, they try everything because it's such a tragedy. So, but they told the parents, okay, he's in a coma now, but you have to pray that he ever will wake up. And thousands of Jews across the world prayed for him. The name went out. Thousands of Jews prayed for him. It's a gorgeous thing that I've told you this before. There's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai once said, Adam refers to a Jew. It doesn't refer to anybody else. There are different ways to say man. You can say ish. You could say en. There's many, many different words for man, but there's also the word Adam. And Adam, he said, refers only to a Jew. Why? There's another explanation that was given by another sage, because Adam is a singular word, and Adam means one person, and only there's nothing like the Jewish people when we are all one. And when somebody gets injured, it turns the stomach. When somebody gets injured in Israel, it turns the stomach of somebody in Ohio, or many people around the globe. We feel it viscerally. So anyway, everybody prayed for him, and nothing was working. Nothing was working. Then one day he's been unconscious in a coma for 16 days. A doctor comes into him. He's not a doctor from the hospital. He's somebody visiting him. And he looks for his father. His father's name is Meir. And he found the father and he said, I have something for your son. I want to give your son something. It's something I've had for 15 years. He said, my father 15 years ago the doctor said, my father 15 years ago was in critical condition. And we happened to be in New York. And somebody said, go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, get a blessing, go to Dollars and get a blessing. And so I went there for my father. And when I went there, I was shocked. The lines were gargantuan. The wait was hours and hours and hours. And I thought, okay, I'm still going to do it. I waited hours. I finally got to the Rebbe. When I saw him, I was stunned. I couldn't say a word. Thank God I came back to myself and I said, my father's in critical condition. We need your blessing. And the Rebbe said, you have my blessing and here is $1. And he said, and usually the Rebbe would say, and this is for tzedakah, but the Rebbe said, this is for your father's refuah, this is for your father's recovery, and pass the $1 along to whoever needs it. And he said, since then, many times people have been in awful shape. He'll show up with the $1. They have a miraculous recovery. He said he's seen back to life miracles time and time and time again. So the father said, thank you so much. He ran with the $1. He put it under his son. The doctor said, put it under his pillow. He put it under Shimon's pillow. And a short while later, the parents saw his fingers are moving. And they ran to the doctors, and the doctor said, nothing. It's a reflex. It can happen. It's a reflex. It's a reflex reaction. And then the next morning, Shimon opened his eyes. The mother screamed, ran out of the room, ran to the doctor screaming, my son opened his eyes. He opened his eyes. He got steadily better and better and better and better. And he left the hospital with a little Band-Aid on his neck. That was the sign of his injury. So I want to tell you, I want to discuss just a tiny bit, what's the difference between a blessing and tefillah. And I want to tell you also that I have $1 that I gave to somebody who was in horrible shape, absolutely horrible shape. And the story had a different ending. A friend of a friend had ALS and was in disastrous condition. Absolutely, as you know, you get in disastrous condition with that disease. And I thought, I'm going to loan them this $1. And it's this Rebbe $1. But before I loaned it to them, I wrote a letter to the Rebbe and I said, Rebbe, this person is in terrible condition. And I'm loaning them this $1. Actually, they were already overseas. We had to get it overseas. I said, I'm giving them this $1 and we need the Rebbe's blessing that this woman should recuperate. And I put it into Igros Kodesh and I opened it up and there was absolutely no blessing, absolutely no hint of a blessing. And I thought, I don't think this is going to work. I think it's not going to work. There's no sign of a blessing anywhere. Anyway, but I had already said I was going to give it. I didn't want to crush anybody's, just in case it still would work. I sent it. It indeed did not work. And the person passed away. And so I want to talk about what is the difference? What is a blessing? What is its limitations? And what is tefillah? So a blessing, we know that they're different, blessing and tefillah. A blessing is every Jew, every person in the world, every blade of grass, everything has a pipeline from heaven extending down to it. And God is constantly pouring blessing through those pipelines to the blade of grass, to the person, to everybody, to everything. a very nice person in Muncie. One time when I was single for umpteen years, I had a Jewish, I was putting out a magazine. I was like the editor of a magazine for Jewish women. And I wanted to interview somebody. He was a Jewish art patron, he and his wife. And I actually lived across the street from him in Muncie. And so I did it. I wanted to do a magazine story about him. And while I was there, he didn't say the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but afterwards I found out that he was constantly going to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, giving him, Jewish artifacts and things like that. He said, I once heard from a great person that from every creature in the world to God, there is a pipeline. And God is constantly stuffing that pipeline with blessing. And there is only one thing that can block the pipeline, that can congest the pipeline. And he said, and that is sadness. If you're sad, the blessings cannot get through. So what is a Rebbe blessing, and what is a blessing in general? The Kohanim also give blessings on the holidays, and in Israel they give it every day, Birkas Kohanim. What is a blessing, and how is it different from tefillah? A person has all sorts of good stuff coming to them. They have the possibilities of much more happening to them that are currently happening to them. Many more good things happening to them. But for some reason, blessings get stuck along the way. Maybe they don't merit that it should move to the next level. They have a blessing that could be coming to them, but they didn't do what they needed to do to merit the next blessing, next level, that it should come down. It has to pass barriers at each level. So a blessing from a tzaddik, from a holy person, a holy man or a holy woman, or a blessing from a kohen can what can it do? It can break through the barriers, and the blessing that should have been coming to you can come to you, can come all the way down to you. So that's what it does. So apparently, maybe this woman did not have the blessing in the pipeline. It wasn't there. So a blessing couldn't help her. Now, Rebbes can also daven for you. They can also pray for you, and you can pray for yourself, and other people can pray for you. What is tefillah, and how is it different from a blessing? So tefillah can actually rewrite the books. Tefillah can actually write in something that is not in the books. So it's a very powerful thing, but where is it? I think it's of Jacob in the Torah. It says that he went out with his bow and arrow, or he went out. I'm not talking about. Don't confuse this with Esav. It's when he was in Shem, and I think that's where it's talking about it. And what is that talking about? He's talking about prayer. He's going out with what is a bow and arrow? A bow and arrow, the farther you pull back on the bow, the farther the arrow is able to shoot. So the same thing with our prayers. The deeper we go, the less superficial it is, the less superficial it is. The more it's heartfelt, the more we brought ourselves to that kind of state, the more likely it is we can actually write in something that was not even there. So I just wanted to tell that little story for clarification about what blessings do and what our own tefillah does. And with that, I give us all a blessing that we achieve faith and calm by being our own best friend this week. I'm going to do it. And I'm hopefully going to do it. I'll report back to you next week. I need to be my own best friend right now because life is extremely demanding. And I give you a blessing that you will all do the same. And I'm going to turn off the recorder, and anybody who wants can ask a question or say something. And